listeners to today's episode of the Black Business Roundtable. I am your host, Doug Blacksher, broadcasting to you live from the city of Diversity, Oakland, California. Although he was born January 15th, 1929, we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day on this third Monday in January, which falls next week on Monday, January 17th, 2022. Legislation was initiated and passed in 1983, but national observation of Martin Luther King Day did not occur until 1986. The annual Martin Luther King Jr. Day of service is here. How will you spend Martin Luther King Day 2022? I would like for all our listeners, for my birthday, happy birthday to me, for my birthday present, which is January 14th, to be sure by Martin Luther King Day, be sure you are registered to vote. I also humbly ask you to ask at least one of your contacts to be sure they are registered, especially in the battleground states of Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Chat online with our show right now and let me know your name and state, and you are registered to vote in 2022, no matter if you are Democrat, Independent, or Republican. Last week, we visited Chef Carter Louise at his restaurant Soul Slice in Oakland, California. I gotta say it again, y'all. Soul can remind me of Soul Train, Dr. Ashley. Soul Slice in Oakland. And I had to go back on Sunday evening. Thank you again, Chef Carter Louise, for hosting the Black Business Roundtable and guest Elisa Victory Esquire, who's running for mayor of Oakland, and our always welcome friend to the show, Trent Willis, president of ILWU Local 10, and of course, Tammy Willis of Magnolia Engineering and Construction. More of those oxtails, please, and the peach cobbler needs to have its own zip code to contain all that flavor. Dr. Ashley, you missed out, girl, but when you come in town, I got your back. Because, audience, I got a surprise for you. Chef Carter Louise of Soul Slice, you will have truly elevated the food experience for those fortunate to be here in the Bay Area, and Chef Carter of Soul Slice, he wants to be a sponsor of the show. So you will see one of his dishes starting next week. Every week after that, he'll have a segment on here, and he will be a sponsor for the Black Business Roundtable. So, audience, I humbly ask that you hurry down or scurry down and get that Soul Slice, whether it's the black eyed peas on pizza, oysters, fried okra over rice with shrimp, oxtails and grits, or that magnificent peach cobbler pizza. Go on down there and support the brother who is supporting the Black Business Roundtable. Carl, Chef Carl, we are proud to have you a sponsor starting next week on our show and be a part of BlackUSA.News family. Thank you. All right. A special thanks to our sponsor, Magnolia Engineering and Construction, for their continued support And we congratulate Tammy Willis on her continued industry accomplishment. Selected by the Board of Directors of BART. BART stands for Bay Area Rapid Transit, for an appointment on the BART Audit Committee. And when Tammy Willis is sworn in as president of the Women's Council, we will make sure we going to try to do it live. But if we can't do it live, we're going to have some great shots to our audience. We want to sponsor. And Dr. Ashley, I am proud of what all our Black women in America and in this world are doing and making a difference to better and empower all people, and especially Black people. You sisters, keep up the good work. We really appreciate you, and we love you from the bottom of our heart. Thank you, Dr. Ashley. And all those sisters out there in the audience, if you're not doing enough, if you don't think you're doing enough, then keep pushing, because just your presence is making a difference. Today's show highlight. Tonight, we will focus on some of the good coming out Oakland due to the effort of our vice mayor and the work she is doing for the citizens of Oakland. Our guests today include weekly check-in with our very own Dr. Ashley Coleman. You know, Dr. Ashley, that's probably my favorite part of the show. I like leaning up, sister, because when I see you there, it empowers me. It's, oh, I got strength. It's like Hercules and Dr. Ashley Coleman, department chair, assistant professor of psychology at University of the West. Dr. Ashley, welcome.
Thank you, Doug. Always happy to be here with you.
Our special guest speaker today will be Rebecca Kaplan, Oakland Vice Mayor and Council Member at Large, serving Alameda County Transportation Commission and Coliseum Board. Instagram Kaplan _4_ Oakland, or email at large at oaklandca.gov. And our social justice warrior, Janani Ramachandran. She continues to be our social justice warrior, fighting for Oakland one day at a time. Catch up with Janani anytime at Central Legal de la Raza website at www.centrallegal.org or via her website www.janani4ca.com and Instagram at Janani4California. Now for the national political highlight and several elections. President Biden visited Atlanta, Georgia this past Tuesday, a battleground state in 2022 and 2024, just ahead of Martin Luther King Day. Now, I got to do a sidebar, Dr. Ashley. About 3 years ago, when I was traveling around the country, looking at small business administration and talking to different chambers across the country, I had an opportunity to visit the Martin Luther King Memorial in Atlanta, Georgia. And audience, it is a sight to be seen. If you are ever in Atlanta, Georgia, please visit the Martin Luther King. I believe it's where his church was and where his memorial that honors him. It was a magnificent and inspiring thing to witness. Marcus Flowers is a brother, and for white people who don't know what brother is, he's a Black man. Proud Army veteran, husband, father, and patriot. He is a Georgia Democrat running for Congress to unseat Marjorie Taylor Greene. Learn more on Instagram at Marcus4 Georgia or Marcus FOR Georgia.com. Reverend and Senator Raphael Warnock is a Democrat, helped flip Georgia blue, along with Senator John Ossoff, is running again for U.S. Senate. He is a pastor. He is an advocate. What? I'm an advocate. Well, we must be brothers because he advocating in Atlanta and I'm advocating in Oakland, California. He's an advocate. He's it made me lose my spot on that. He's a pastor, he's an advocate, and he's Savannah born and raised and Morehouse College alumni. And I believe Donnie Glover, the founder of BlackUSA.News, is a graduate of Morehouse College. Learn more on Instagram at Raphael Warnock or www.warnock4georgia.com. Stacey Abrams, a Democrat, is running to unseat Republican Brian Kemp for governor of Georgia. And to quote Stacey Abrams, opportunity in our state shouldn't be determined by zip code, background, or access to power. Learn more on Instagram at Stacey Abrams or StaceyAbrams.com. Now, briefly on Stacey Abrams, and I said at the last show, but Stacey Abrams put out a wonderful tape regarding how the votes are being, the voters and the voting booths and the places in Georgia are being eliminated. They're trying to take the vote away from the marginalized areas, specifically Black. And as I said last time, in the movie, you'll see how when you go to the white neighborhood, people are in and out of there in 5 minutes, and that includes parking their car. In the Black neighborhood, people have to bring a lunch, a sleeping bag, and a couple of batteries to keep their phone charged up. And it's disgraceful, and it needs to stop. Stacey Abrams, we support you here in Oakland, California. Val Demings, another sister, a Democrat, is running for 2022 Florida Senate seat. If you would like to stay updated on team things, text the word join to 77076. Former Orlando police chief is seeking to unseat Republican Little Marco Rubio in Florida. And Dr. Ashley, you know why I'm laughing. Little Marco Rubio, pack your little bag, put your little tennis shoes on that you got from Nike's kids department, and as Trump says, scurry on up out of there. We'll see you next time, little Marco Rubio. Val Demings for the 2022 Senate. Her tagline, never tire. Election date, November 8th, 2022. Val Demings at .com or Instagram at Val Demings. And once again, audience, and we're going to be continuously repeating that. Vote, vote, vote. And if you don't know if you can vote, you can go online and check the registration in your respective state, county, and city. But these politicians, some of them, are running amok because they know that we are not holding them accountable. Vote, vote, vote. And if you're not registered to vote, register to vote, then vote. Thank you, audience. And now, the news of the day. Dr. Ashley, please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. And want to acknowledge again the sponsored news of the day from the Equal Justice Initiative. On this day, in 1904, a mob of white people lynched a Black man known as General Lee in Reevesville, South Carolina, for allegedly knocking on the door of a white woman's home. The night before, The woman reported that she had opened the door to her home after hearing a knock and saw a black man running away from her house. The next day, a group of white men from the town went to the local magistrate to seek a warrant for the arrest of Mr. Lee, whose foot they claimed could have made a track similar to the ones found outside the woman's home. Subsequently, Mr. Lee was arrested on the evening of January 13th and charged with criminally assaulting a white woman. On 1 mile outside of Reevesville, a mob of 50 white men seized Mr. Lee from police officers who were transferring him by buggy to a local jail. And the police officers who abandoned Mr. Lee reported hearing gunshots as they fled the scene. 2 days later, Mr. Lee's body was found tied to a tree, and he had been shot to death. Newspapers reported that the woman who had reported the alleged crime knew Mr. Lee and never claimed she believed that he was the assailant. No one was arrested in connection to Mr. Lee's murder. And in a letter to the governor of South Carolina, the local sheriff in Reevesville justified the mob's actions by suggesting that Mr. Lee was in, quote, bad standing with the local community and that people were surprised Mr. Lee had, quote, not been dealt with in like manner several years ago. So again, I want to invite our listeners to take a deep breath before you visit the website, but just to get an understanding of the climate that our ancestors had to deal with, and this idea of the footprints of certain regions of our country. So again, that is the news from January 13th, 1904.
Dr. Ashley, when you talk about stories, and hold on, we won't say stories, history.
Mm-hmm.
Me as a black man, I get concerned, and I also want to say again, the reason why things have changed significantly now, because our grandparents and our great-grandparents gave up their lives for us to have opportunity to vote and be a part of this economic development that has somehow overlooked the black community, but it's here and we can fight for it through our vote. Last audience and not least, if you do not vote, then don't worry about being broke. If you do not vote, you can't have economic growth and development and hold our politicians accountable for economic development and prosperity for all people. Thank you, Dr. Ashley. And then on that note, I'm going to need some psychology, some therapy. Next, our weekly check-in with, once again, audience, our very own Dr. Ashley Coleman, Doctor of Psychology. Dr. Ashley, please take it away. Thank you.
You're welcome, Doug. And again, happy early birthday. So happy to be here with you. And again, happy Thursday to our listeners. Here we are entering into about to complete another week in January, and we've been building on these expectations of the new year. I want to introduce some survival skills from dialectical behavioral therapy. DBT is a therapy that was originally developed by Dr. Marsha Linehan to address an emotional disorder called borderline personality disorder. However, the skills, which consist of mindfulness skills, interpersonal effectiveness skills, emotional regulation skills, and distress tolerance skills, are very useful in the sense to help us monitor our emotions, regulate our emotions, and make decisions that are aligned with our values. This week isn't necessarily starting off the way, or this month, the way we want it to. We're hearing about COVID. We're hearing about other stressors, homelessness, weather changes, personal grief. And so I want to introduce an emotion regulation skill. So when we want to manage our emotions, we use emotion regulation skills. Then there's distress tolerance skills, which we use when we're going through pain and we want to make decisions that don't make it worse. Right? So Doug, I know for you, you've been very forthcoming and challenging our listeners to make decisions that don't involve substance use, or other ways to cope that may work in the short term, but present a whole host of challenges. And so there's an acronym that I want to introduce today. You know, I love my acronyms, but just walking through, it's called ABC, please. A is accumulate positive emotions. So what we try to do in the short term is, what can you do in the moment to bring you a little bit of pleasure, but it's healthy and it's not going to throw you off track. For me, I like my smells. I'm burning a candle right now. Aromatherapy is very important to me. Sometimes it's scenery. So what can you do to kind of, is it music that you can play in the background that's soothing? So it's A, accumulate positive emotions. B is build mastery. Do something that makes you feel competent or to make you feel effective. For me, that can also be doing something that I've been pushing off and just checking it off my box. It's like getting up and just emptying the dishwasher, making sure the sink doesn't have anything in it, folding the laundry that can linger or be in the chair. Just again, something to build a sense of momentum in getting tasks done. C is coping with emotions ahead. Right now, so many people are still dealing with COVID. We're still in a pandemic. A lot of people were claiming this is my year, and it still can be. But right now, we have to make decisions that are smart, that are healthy, that are protective. And that may mean a little bit of separation. That may mean like managing expectations of your performance or someone else's. So, what can you do ahead of time? What can you plan ahead of time? Giving yourself room in your schedule, right? Asking for extensions if you need them, communicating, asking for support at work. What are the ways in which you can actually lighten your load? So that's the C, coping head with emotions. And then the final acronym is PLEASE. So it's treat physical illness, number one, balance eating, avoid mood altering substances, balance sleep, and get exercise. Now, if you're currently sick, we're not asking you to do anything against your medical advice, but could that just be involved stretching, getting out of bed, stretching in the morning? That can regulate mood, that can regulate stress. But again, sleep, very important. What's the sleep hygiene? Is it changing your sheets? Is it powering down electronics at least 90 minutes before you get in bed? Something like keeping a notebook for the warriors, the worry wards, keeping a notebook by bed so that you can let out, journal and jot down what's in your mind to give your body permission to power down and restore. But these are just some things. So again, looking for ways to boost your mood, just a little bit, something that brings you pleasure. Is it a 5-minute song? Is it a puzzle? Is it, again, listening to something, seeing something, visualization? B, again, building in those activities. C, coping ahead with emotions, and then just taking care of mind, body, and spirit. And this is the way. Right now, it may not look like you want it to look. If you're coping with COVID, we want you to recover, but being able to keep things manageable so that they can get better. And keeping your mindset on knowing that things will get better is important.
Dr. Ashley, and you already know what I'm going to say. Listening to you is like getting a massage. I know when it's over with, I'm going to feel better both mentally and physically. Our
Well,
area. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, thank you. I just want to say too, there is a waiting list for therapists right now. So we know we put in a plug to encourage our listeners to seek mental health therapy or support, and that can just be to also maintain what's going well. But I just want to let you know at the start of the year and the rollover of insurance, the waiting list can be long. So if you're even thinking about it, why not reach out, put yourself on a list, and see how you feel by the time they call you back. If you're helping a loved one access a therapist, just know in-network providers, there can be a list. There are also out-network providers. Ask about reimbursement, but just wanting to plant that seed that now is a good time if you want to connect with someone. And we have some wonderful providers in the Bay Area and California at large. Some places to look. So one, if you're in network, you can look through your insurance, asking them for a referral. Depending on your policy, you may need that referral from a primary care physician. So starting in network, you can also look at Psychology Today. You can look for therapy for Black girls, therapy for Black men, as well as the Association of Black Psychologists. So that's a way that you too, if you want to find a provider where gender, racial, or other aspects of identity are important to you.
Dr. Ashley, thank you. And thank you for what you bring to this show and to this audience in regard to mental health. Because you can be the strongest person in the world, but the weakest in the mind, and that means you will crumble. Thank you, Dr. Ashley.
Thank you, Doug.
Well, let's do a quick sponsor break, and I am fired up for our next exciting mayor on the Black Business Roundtable. Go ahead, take it away, Dr. Ashley.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Donnie Glover of BlackUSA.News. And be sure to tune in to Chap and Friends on Mondays, Party Marty Let's Talk on Tuesdays. A special thank you to Magnolia Engineering and Construction, whose vision is to further the presence of Black women in the construction and engineering industry through key partnerships and building contracts in the municipal, government, and transportation sectors. And to join our advertising family, please send your company name, address, website, and other details to our email address, bbrt2021@hotmail.com. So happy to hear that Chef Carter will be joining our team of advertisers, and that's really exciting. I'm looking forward to that.
Well, let me just tell you this. My stomach is roaring right now next week because I've asked Mr. Carter if we can have some of our shows at his place of business, and he did. So we're going to try to time it around when you come out here. But without further delay, let's welcome Vice Mayor Rebecca Kaplan, starting with her bio. Dr. Ashley, please take it away.
Absolutely. Rebecca Kaplan has represented the entire city of Oakland at its council member at large since 2009. She was unanimously appointed by her colleagues to represent the city as Oakland's vice mayor. As the representative to Oakland, Kaplan has pushed for transparency and accountability in all levels of service, including the city's contracting policies. Kaplan championed the City of Oakland's 2017 Disparity Report and its 2020 release, which showed a lack of support for African American Black businesses. She has consistently advocated to rectify that disparity by supporting grants and contracts to Oakland's Black businesses, including the African American Sport and Entertainment Group, AASEG's proposal to revitalize the Oakland Coliseum.
Welcome, Vice Mayor and Council Member at Large, Rebecca Kaplan. We welcome you onto the show today.
Thank you so much. It is such an honor to be with you, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to have some time together.
Well, we're going to light it right up, audience, and we appreciate you. We know with all the things going on with Oakland, to take time away to share some of the great things that you're doing in Oakland and talk about how we can improve the status of Black businesses doing business in Oakland. We're going to start right away with I know you very well, and personally, I think the biggest misconception may be how hard you work in communities of color legislatively. Perception is reality, and you lean toward taking the high road and always look for solutions. You always seem to think outside the box, cultivating minority business opportunity inclusion as well for women-owned businesses. Vice Mayor Rebecca Kaplan, what do you think is the biggest misconception about you? Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And I so appreciate your warm words and the opportunity to be together and to talk about not only the work we've done, but what also remains to be done in terms of remedying the dramatic inequities in Oakland and in terms of, for example, the disparity study, which you mentioned. That is a legal obligation for Oakland to perform to study the racial and gender equity or lack thereof in city contracts. And we had to fight for that to be done. And after we fought for the study to be done, we had to fight for it to be released because some people didn't want it to be released. And one of the things I think that I strive to bring and that I think we all need to bring to these conversations is that we have to be willing to look at uncomfortable truths and to admit what's really going on, which is that Black-owned businesses have been dramatically underrepresented in city contracts and in city development opportunities. And so that's why I made the motion to bring the report to council, was that I felt that it's not okay to hide that data and that the disparities have consistently been bad year after year and that we need to dramatically change how we're doing business. And that's part of why we work to launch the program with the Construction Resource Center. But we could talk more about that in a moment. But I think fundamentally, this hinges on we have to be willing to tell the truth and to see the truth in order to take action to remedy it.
Well, going off script real quick, I can say you had me at African American Sports and Entertainment Group. And that's down the line, but when I saw you there, I was truly inspired by what you were doing to push for for the first Black NFL-owned team in America, in the world. So thank you for that, and we'll further that discussion later. Can you briefly break down for our national audience what the City of Oakland's this 2017 Disparity Study Report is, and why did you advocate for this report and its 2020 release showing a lack of support for African American Black businesses? Thank you.
Well, absolutely. So what this report found was not only about whether there were prejudicial attitudes, but what it found is that this disparity costs millions of dollars in terms of contracts not going to African American owned businesses, and also women owned businesses are underrepresented. And so what that means is not only prejudice, this means dollars and cents literally not in the pockets of people who should have that money in their pockets if the contracts were given out equitably. And when we talk about the ongoing racial wealth gap, that doesn't come out of nowhere. And some will say, well, it comes from history. And that's also true, but that doesn't mean that we can just let it continue. It is in our hands now to take the actions that are before us to remedy the inequities that continue. And so what the disparity study showed was not only that Black-owned and women-owned businesses were underrepresented in getting city contracts, but that was worth millions of dollars that was not in people's hands. And so that's why we worked with the CRC and grassroots community folks who met with us when we finally got the disparity study to be published. And they approached me and they said, we have an idea. You know, a lot of times the Black-owned contractors don't get through the city paperwork process to be eligible bidders on these projects. So we want to do workshops to train people and prepare people and give them direct help in terms of getting through this process to then be able to get the city contracts in terms of how to apply, what background work you need to have, all the materials and support you need to have to be able to do that. And so at the urging of community, I put money in a budget amendment that I brought to council to fund that project, to do those educational seminars and direct technical assistance to help Black contractors get through the process to be able to get those city contracts. And it was a big fight. And, one would perhaps wish that it wouldn't be a big fight, but also, we got to fight the fights that are before us to fight. And so we put that in our budget amendment. We fought for it to come through the council. The council passed it. Then we had to fight to get the administration to issue the check after the council had approved the project. So that took additional pressure too. But that has now happened, and that program now is funded. And that's the kind of tangible, real world strategies that we have to bring to this. It's not enough. Well, certainly it's not enough to pretend it's not a problem, but it's also not even enough to say it is a problem. We have to also support the solutions.
Well, let me be perfectly clear, our national audience watching this show today live in Oakland, California. I personally know of Vice Mayor Kaplan's commitment not only to challenge the mayor when she thinks that things are not being done correctly, but to work with small businesses. For FYI, and I think it may be down the script a little bit, but I am a proud graduate from CRC, Lynn Turner and LaTanya Turner, just to see how their program differed from the other programs offered by Hensel & Phelps, Clark Construction, Turner Construction, et cetera, et cetera. And nothing barring what the other big company and big white-owned companies bring to the table. But one thing I found strikingly different is that Construction Resource Center, CRC, LaTanya Hawkins and Lynn Turner, they gave a different perspective of construction out of the views of a Black person's perspective. Now, audience, let me take my glasses off because I don't need to read this because I've been through this process. When a Black person does contracts, whether it be with government or the large European-owned construction company, there is a big difference in how we're treated and how we are worked over to lose money instead of to build capacity, build our business, and build for the next project. So I'm gonna give you a big hands off for your foresight in talking to CRC and talking to Lynn and LaTanya, and keeping in mind, if you do not have that back office infrastructure, your business will fail. And I'll say that one more time before I put my glasses on and read off the script. If you do not have that back office infrastructure, Davis-Bacon Act, understanding project labor agreement, understanding insurance and bonding, understanding how to read contracts, understanding how to turn in a invoice. Because let me stop at invoice. If your invoice is not correct, not only do you hold up the money for your business, but you hold up money for the general contractor and the other subcontractors that are waiting to get paid, who did take the time to learn how to do that back office administrative work. So kudos to you, Vice Mayor and Council Member at Large, Rebecca Kaplan, for your foresight and understanding. Training is needed to prepare these people. And I'm going to be honest, in 2022, based on this disparity studies, we're going to increase the number of African Americans getting contracts. Because, for example, they got a $314 million contract that are going in front of City Council for work coming up, that we're going to be working with the City of Oakland to make sure that we have Black businesses out there working on it, increase that 0.32% of almost $500 million of contract to a number that's more sustainable. Dr. Ashley, please give us our sponsor break. And because we're working on, we are really ahead on time. Uh, Vice Mayor Kaplan, we're going to be asking you to light it up and tell us some of the great things you're doing, because it's clear that we have a major player in the city of Oakland right here on the Black Business Roundtable. Dr. Ashley, please take it away.
Absolutely. So again, thank you, Mr. Donnie Glover of BlackUSA.News. Listeners, be sure to tune into Sister Biz with Nicole and Tamara on Wednesdays, and also Black USA Crypto News with Kamal Hubbard on Fridays. And we want to acknowledge our main sponsor, Tammy Willis, owner of Magnolia Engineering and Construction. Please learn more about the company by visiting its website, www.magnoliaengineeringandconstruction.com, who wants to be a part of growing with the beautiful community of Oakland, California. Connect with Magnolia Engineering and Construction on all social media platforms. And again, if you would like to join our advertising family, please email details about your company to bbrt2021@hotmail.com.
Dr. Ashley, even when you advertise, you are soothing. Hey, I just had another massage, doctor. And all right, let's continue with Vice Mayor Rebecca Kaplan of Oakland, California. Dr. Ashley, please.
Thank you. So, Vice Mayor, you have been such a champion of remedying economic disparity that some of our listeners may not know this, but you were able to get a grant fully funded for $500,000 for Construction Resource Center, CRC, Lynn Turner, as well as you've been collaborating with Ray Bobbitt and AASEG. And I'm curious, what is your experience been collaborating with these community giants?
Well, it is so wonderful that we have here such a blessing of dedicated, committed, effective African American business and development leaders. Mm-hmm. And it's also important to recognize that even so, the opportunities are so often denied. Mm-hmm. And so I want to be clear that the opportunities being denied isn't just about that people aren't good enough or don't have enough degrees or any of that stuff. That even when the Black bidder is bringing the strongest proposal, there is still a bias toward favoring the white people and toward favoring the same inner circle of connected white people over and over again. And so we recently went through this with the debate about working with the African American Sports and Entertainment Group, with AASEG for the Oakland Coliseum. And so thrilled to be talking to the whole national audience, because this project is of national significance. And we have in Oakland this huge parcel. It's about 200 acres of public land. It is on a BART station, which is, Bay Area wide rail transit. It is on the Amtrak Capital Corridor line. It is on the freeway. It is near Oakland Airport, which, by the way, Oakland Airport, one of the most on-time airports in the world. We never get fog. We never get snow. Great airport, easy to use. So here we have this huge parcel of land that is at the heart of the greater Northern California mega region, and it is accessible by every form of transportation. It is on rail, it is on bus, it is on BART, it is on freeway, it is on airport, and it is in the heart of a community that has been historically underserved and where a lot of people are looking for work. And not only that, for those who've ever done development in California, you may know that one of the things that takes some time is doing your environmental and your planning process. And this parcel has already done that. The city already went out and did the plan and the environmental clearance to allow development on this property. And so we have what is really one of the most developable parcels in the nation. and an opportunity to really use it in a way that will benefit the community, with housing at all income levels, with jobs, with business, with public services on site as well, so that people in East Oakland can get easier access to public and governmental service without having to always go downtown. So that's one of the things we've talked about, including on this site, but also hotels and shops and restaurants, and sports and entertainment. Is one of the things that this group has led with. And also AASEG, the African American Sports and Entertainment Group, has been strongly, proudly Black run, Black centered, and that's also important and worthy nationwide news. And so they proposed to develop the Coliseum, and they felt some resistance from certain aspects of the city administration toward working with them, even though they had a really strong group and a really strong proposal. Part of their group is Alan Dones, who's a developer who's done a lot of work in our region. Part of their group is Ray Bobbitt, who you mentioned, amazing community leader. Part of their group is Robert Bobb, the former city manager of the city of Oakland, so someone with a lot of knowledge. And also Loop Capital, which is the largest Black-owned capital investment firm in the nation. And so they're really solid group, and yet still they were encountering resistance. And so, you know, when people talk about having to be twice as good to get half as far, I mean, that was really some of the experience. And so, you know, I started working with them to troubleshoot what was going on in terms of why the staff wasn't forwarding what they were trying to do. And then I worked to bring it directly to the council for approval to move ahead. And they have been doing such incredible work. And one of the things that is at this large parcel in Oakland is the basketball arena, the arena where this team, who, you know, I hesitate to mention, but there used to be this famous basketball team that used to play there. And now we have this beautiful basketball arena available. And so one of the things that AASEG is planning to bring to this site is a WNBA team to the arena, which is already there and all set up for basketball. We have a WNBA basketball behind me.
Yes, I was going to call that out, Vice Mayor. I noticed. Yes.
And so, you know, but and of course, you know, the WNBA thing is amazing and exciting, and Oakland will be the strongest fan base for WNBA team in the whole nation, and people will come here from everywhere, and the Sacramento Monarchs fans can get here easily on the train that pulls up right there to come enjoy basketball. But that is also just an example of the kind of exciting and community engagement that they are seeking to bring, as they are also working to do housing and jobs and a whole array of uses on this very large site. And so in the last few months, we had a lot of public hearings, and we brought them forward, and this came to council, and they got to present, and other bidders got to present. And so, you know, then we had the vote of the council, and it passed unanimously. So it was really a beautiful moment. And of course, now the work continues to actually forward the development plan, but the council voted unanimously to enter into that exclusive negotiating agreement with AASEG for the Coliseum. And I think it's a really important moment because, you know, when we talk about the disparities and the underrepresentation of Black businesses, that happens not only with one-off construction contracts, that happens with large development opportunities. And this is one of the largest, most important parcels around. And so it's really an opportunity to change that historic unjust norm in terms of who gets access to these really important development opportunities, which then creates the opportunity for hundreds of businesses to participate. And so with leadership that cares about remedying the inequity, that then has the opportunity to provide more opportunity throughout the community.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Vice Mayor. A few things. You mentioned the Coliseum being one of the most strategic Coliseums in the nation. And I want to elaborate on that You got BART, which our sponsor, Tammy Willis, sits on the BART board as an auditor. You have the airport. You have the train station. You have AC Transit. You have 880 Nimitz. The land out there, the parking is humongous. So I myself commend you because, as you know, sports, African American Sports and Entertainment Group, they are a friend on this show, and we support them. They are a friend on this show, and we support them. Ray Bobbitt has come on, and Dr. Ashley, I don't know about you, but he has laid out the plan not only to build a stadium, but empower the people around the stadium with job training programs, taking the businesses that have been devastated by this pandemic and other Oakland issues and empower them to provide service. So we appreciate that and what you're doing. And most importantly, I can honestly say, when I talk to Ray Bobbitt about you, he starts smiling because we have a city council here in Oakland, California that, in my opinion, and Vice Mayor, this is my opinion, have not shown the help, have not shown the energy that they've shown other sports-owned franchises who have been all white. Your commitment to that is appreciated and respected on the Black Business Roundtable. And I'm speaking from not from myself, I'm speaking from people who are out there working with you. And Ray Bobbitt made it clear that you were the first or one of the first who grabbed the flag and said, let's charge up that hill and get you guys. So I'm truly humbled by that. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. No, and you know, there's such an amazing team. Also, of course, Shonda Scott, 360 Total Concepts, an amazing Black woman business leader. And so, you know, it was such a strong group, and a group with really all the different skills and components that you need to put together this type of project. And I was very honored to get to help push this forward and make it happen. And, you know, I also think that sometimes people are afraid to say something that they're afraid will be controversial. Mm-hmm. And that's how come things that need to change don't change. And so, you know, seeing that this Black development group was not being given the sufficient time and attention to move this project forward, you know, I decided to go ahead and schedule it and take the action to move to push that forward. And it worked. So, absolutely.
Well, that's the type of commitment we need. And in light of the economics in the Black community, not just here in Oakland and in the county and in the state and in the country, but all across the world, we appreciate politicians like you who not only talk the walk and come around when it comes time to get those votes, but actually jump on the bandwagon. And if not, we don't have enough horses to pull it, you jump out in front and start pulling the horses. So we appreciate you. Thank you, Council Member and Vice Mayor Rebecca Kaplan. Dr. Ashley, since we were a little bit ahead, but can you give us a quick sponsor break, and let's immediately jump back in with Vice Mayor of the City of Oakland and Council Member at Large, Rebecca Kaplan. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you again, Mr. Donnie Glover, for this wonderful platform. Be sure to tune in to his YouTube page, YouTube/Donnie Glover, for more informative and insightful Black community news. Also, like us on our Facebook social media page. Magnolia Engineering and Construction. The mission is to become the premier building and engineering resource for large-scale commercial and transportation building projects in the Bay Area and beyond. The vision is to further the presence of Black women in the construction and engineering industry through key partnerships and building contracts in the municipal, government, and transportation sectors. And again, if you're interested in joining our advertising family, please send us an email at bbrt2021@hotmail.com. Back to you, Doug, so we can continue this great conversation with Vice Mayor Kaplan.
Well, Vice Mayor, I'm going to, we have a brand new sponsor who's going to start next week, but we had our show at his place last week. And starting next week, he's going to have a 5, 10, 15 minute, he'll have a little spot where he talks about the different dishes. And the name of the place, because it's in Oakland, California, at 5849 San Pablo, Oakland, California. And for those of you who didn't join us last week, we were at Soul Slice. The food was amazing. Magnolia Engineering came there. Lisa Victory, who's running for mayor, she showed up. Trent Willis, ILWU Local 10 president, was there, and we ate ourselves, when I left there, to sleep. So thank you. All right. Audience, as you see, we have our Vice Mayor of Oakland, California, and Council Member at Large, Rebecca Kaplan, as our special guest today on the Black Business Roundtable. I commend you for your efforts at the very beginning of the pandemic as you worked to be sure the ethnic chamber were funded for their programming. In addition, you spearheaded the need for pandemic community vaccination equity, which brought mass vaccination sites to Oakland. Can you share with the Black Business Roundtable listeners briefly about, and since we have a lot of time, you don't have to do it briefly, you can expand on it, sister, briefly about these two pivotal pandemic efforts and the outcome for our community. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things we fought for was funding in the budget to go to the ethnic chambers, as well as some of the other grassroots community groups and groups like BWAPA, to do the COVID education and outreach, groups like Oakland Frontline Healers as well, to provide those services directly in the community. And then we additionally provided funding through a budget amendment last April to augment those services with the vaccination outreach. And since you said I may elaborate, one little piece of the backstory that people might not have heard is where that money came from last spring, right? Because last spring, everything was in economic crisis. The mayor had announced publicly that the city was out of money and was going to start shutting down fire stations. So the notion that there would be money for core grassroots community needs seemed unlikely. And then I found $10 million that wasn't listed in the published budget of the city. So how was it that there was an extra $10 million that they hadn't known about? Well, in addition to serving on the Oakland City Council, I'm one of Oakland's representatives on the Coliseum Authority Board, which is the board that oversees this fabulous 200-acre site we've been talking about. And that board, which includes city representatives and county representatives and public representatives, that board oversees the interactions of the facilities at the Coliseum. And a few years ago, one of the white-owned teams had decided to not pay their bills. When they left Oakland, they wanted to not pay about $50 million that they owed on the bond debt at the arena. And so one of the actions I took as a member of the Coliseum board was for us to hire some expert attorneys to help us analyze what they were saying and how they could possibly think they didn't have to pay and how to fight it. So that was one of the actions that I got the board to do. So we brought in these expert attorneys and they figured it out and went through all the documents and found where it said that they did have to pay. And so that went to court, and then it went on appeal, and then it went on appeal because I guess billionaires don't want to pay their bills. And we won. And so because we won, the money that had been set aside to pay the bond debt in case we lost then became available. And that's how, in the middle of the deepest moment of the economic downturn under COVID, we were able to find $10 million that hadn't been previously accounted for in the city budget and use that to fund some of these very vital programs that you're talking about. And one of the other things we were able to do by being on that Coliseum board was to move the proposal to open the Coliseum site as a mass vaccination site. At the time, of course, last year, all the games and concerts were shut down, and the vaccines were just starting to come out, and nobody was vaccinated. And the question was, how can we vaccinate as many people as quickly as possible? And the Coliseum site, super developable site, has huge numbers of lanes in and out and is accustomed to moving tens of thousands of people in and out quickly. So we were able to set up a drive-through vaccination site there that served hundreds of thousands of people in our community. And then we also worked with FEMA and Cal OES, the State Office of Emergency Services, to also take mobile vans out into the community and go to places like the parking lot at Allen Temple Baptist Church and do vaccination not only at the one large central site, but at other community-based sites to reach more people in the most underserved communities. Frankly, I want to say I don't think that effort is over. We're pushing now for more vaccination sites to open because, again, people now need to get boosted as well.
Well, that covered that. Audience, I'd like to say, as you all know, we have the soul sister of medicine, Dr. Glenda Newell Harris and Dr. D. Banks, who's Dr. Glenda Newell is a medical licensed doctor and physician, and Dr. D. Banks is a disease specialist who comes on the show, and actually they're scheduled for next week. So thank you, Vice Mayor Kaplan, for articulating what you have done and continue to do as it relates to this pandemic virus in our community. Because we have some people who are thinking that it is a hoax, that you shouldn't get the shot, and it's tragic, the number of lives that we have lost because some people choose not to be intelligent. I'm not going to say be ignorant, but not to be intelligent. This is a serious, serious situation. And next week, Dr. D. Bank and Dr. Newell will be on the show to tell you how serious it is, specifically as it relates to the Omicron strand. Dr. Ashley, please.
Sure. Vice Mayor, can you define environmental racism for our audience and expound on how it disproportionately affects community of colors or communities where economic wealth is absent?
Yes, thank you so much. Environmental racism and environmental injustice is a major problem, and is a major problem in Oakland as well as other places, right? In Louisiana, in parts of LA, right? This is not something that is only in Oakland, but we do have some slides I think we can show. Let's see if we can get the slides up on the screen so we can really show people what we're talking about in terms of the disparate targeting of the pollution. I see, oh wait, it says audio only. Let's see if we can get the screen share up. And I can go ahead and explain what it is we're talking about while they work on that. Okay. And here we go. Here is the map. So thank you so much for putting that up. So what you see here on your screen is a map of the Bay Area. So this is Northern California, and this is a 2005 map and a 2015 map of cancer risk from air pollution. So this is specifically a map of where communities are being the most harmed by air pollution. And if you see from, and purple is the worst, and then the orange, and then the yellow. And so if you see between 2005 and 2015, that a lot of the air pollution in some of the greater Bay Area went away. You go to 2015, the air pollution is very concentrated in this one spot, the purple line here. That is where people are being harmed by air pollution. And then we go to the next slide, which will zoom us in. So here's the zoom in of that same shot. And what you can see is this purple line, which is essentially all of the lethal air pollution in the whole greater Northern California region, is in Oakland. And not only in Oakland, but specifically this line down here goes along like the 880, which goes through East Oakland. And then you come up here and you have the port where a lot of the trucks are going, and then through West Oakland. And so what that is showing us is that when we talk about air pollution, the air pollution is not everywhere. The air pollution is in a specific location that is along where the trucks are. Specifically, you have a lot of diesel particulate emissions that is making up this line showing where the most people are being injured by air pollution. And it is along the 880 and the truck routes from San Leandro through East Oakland to West Oakland, around the port and just beyond that area. And so the first time I saw this map at a meeting of the Bay Area Air Quality Management District Board, I immediately said to the board, that is a map of Black neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And they had not done that overlay, right? They had not provided this with an overlay of racial composition. But I looked at that map and immediately it was obvious, like, oh, this is a map of the Black neighborhoods. That's where the toxic air pollution is concentrated. And that is because that's where the trucks are concentrated. And so when we talk about what does environmental racism mean, this is one of the most stark examples of what environmental racism means. It means that the most deadly pollutants, the things that are causing asthma and cancer and other deadly diseases, are entirely concentrated, also somewhat in the Latino neighborhood, and then predominantly in the Black neighborhoods in East and West Oakland. And so this helps explain why some of the leaders have not been as focused on stopping the truck pollution, because the truck pollution is not impacting everyone. And so if people sometimes try to debate, you know, is environmentalism broadly more important or is environmental justice more important? I want to say that they are not separate. The reason that for 30 years that this has been known about, that it hasn't been fixed, is because of environmental racism. If white people were being made sick and killed at this rate, it would have been fixed by now. And so you can't separate environmental impacts more broadly from environmental racism, because the racial inequity is fundamentally intertwined with why this has been allowed to continue. And so in order to protect the community, we have to clean up the truck emissions. Now, there's a couple different ways to do that. One is when you can, moving some freight by rail pollutes less. The trains create less congestion and less pollution. And also, we have to use cleaner trucks, right? These are a lot of heavily polluting diesel trucks, which emit a lot of particulates. And so part of the solution is to use some of the new truck technology that is now available that provides for the ability to have zero emission trucks. And that includes hybrid, battery electric, and hydrogen fuel cell. And hydrogen fuel cell is particularly important for trucks. You may have seen a lot of people for cars going to electric cars. And electric trucks are important too. I don't want to downplay electric trucks, but hydrogen trucks can travel farther and carry heavier loads. So if we're trying to get people off of diesel trucks and they need something else that can go long distance and handle heavy duty, the hydrogen fuel cell trucks are very promising in that effort. And so this slide is a picture of a zero emission hydrogen fuel cell truck. This picture is taken right at the entrance to the Port of Oakland, where these trucks came 2 weeks ago to start a pilot project that we worked to launch to bring zero emission hydrogen fuel cell trucks to the Port of Oakland and a hydrogen fueling station, so that not only the trucks that we're bringing as part of this project, but when you have a fueling station, you can attract other people to bring their hydrogen trucks because they'll be able to fuel them here. And East Bay Mud is a partner on this. The state put some money into it. The Alameda County Transportation Commission, which I serve on, was one of the initial funders that helped spur it forward. And the Bay Area Air Quality Management District Board, on which I used to serve, has also put in some of the funding. And then we got a major grant from the California Energy Commission. And so this effort is now underway. The first batch of trucks has arrived and the fueling stations being built. And so we're going to now be able to have some zero emission trucks serving our community, and we will be pushing to continue to expand those. And then the last slide, just a little bit of history, is how I got into the zero emission heavy duty vehicle world is, as was mentioned, before I was on the Oakland City Council, I was on the board of AC Transit. For those of you elsewhere in the country, your local transit agency might not be an elected position, but here in the Bay Area, our public transit authorities are elected boards. So before I was on the Oakland City Council, I was an elected board member of the AC Transit Board of Directors. And while I was there, I got to participate in the launch of the zero emission hydrogen fuel cell bus project, which this is a picture here in front of Lake Merritt in Oakland of the zero emission hydrogen fuel cell bus. And the success of that project, showing the ability to use this technology for large heavy duty vehicles like buses, has actually contributed significantly to the ability now to be doing this with trucks as well. And there's a lot of overlap in the technologies. And so that too is part of what is allowing this to happen.
Vice Mayor Kaplan, I just have to say, I have the privilege of asking the next question, but I have to be transparent and just share with you that that slideshow was very invaluable, but also validating. As an Oakland native, I can't begin to say how many people, and an Oakland native in my 30s, how many people actually have been touched by cancer that live in that environment. And so again, when I'm thinking, Doug, I'll come to you in a second, but when I'm thinking of the parents, like the children of parents that are taking them to the doctor and trying to figure out what is causing, what are the risk factors, and just how we know there are health disparities as far in the medical world. Again, this is just exposure. And I truly appreciate you, again, advocating and blowing the whistle and acknowledging just where there can be more justice. Doug?
As you can see, Dr. Ashley got me trained. Raise your hand, Doug.
Oh, yeah.
Vice Mayor Rebecca Kaplan, as you know, I will take on anybody on anything, whether it be council, mayor, governor, or president of the United States. But I congratulate you for thinking outside of the box. And audience, before you get into the next question, Dr. Ashley, let me be clear, Vice Mayor Kaplan. You know, if you're wrong, I'll tell you you're wrong. I won't write you a note. I won't send you an email. And I won't send a dove with a note tied to his leg. But audience, this is the type of politician we need to understand and back and make sure that she knows she has our support. There's going to be some tougher questions coming up soon, but let me be clear, audience. The things that you're saying, and the slideshow, that's the first slideshow we've ever had on the show. So she's thinking outside of the box and bringing more progressive things, not only to Oakland, but to the show. But we appreciate you and keep up the good work. And that cancer, as we all know, all across this country, cancer, whether it be in the air or in the pipes, it plays predominantly Black community. Thank you. Please go ahead, Dr. Ashley. When it comes to health and economics, I'm just tired. Vice Mayor Rebecca, I speak all the time on Black people are on the bottom of every list, not in the city, not in the county, not in the state, not in the country, but in the world. And my goal on this show is to make sure that I fight for economic development. And I love what you're saying in regards to helping the African-American sports and entertainment group. And it's not what you're saying, it's what you're doing. Because you know I'm out there too, and Ray Bobbitt has been on the show So he gives me some insight on city council, who is doing something and who is not. And those who are not, I'll be addressing you soon. Thank you.
Vice Mayor, just a quick follow-up. I'm curious about the length of the pilot program. How will it be determined if this is going to be replicated? And how can we continue in the community to advocate for your efforts? You know, it was when you showed Lake Merritt, I got nostalgic. That's my neighborhood, and I'm down in Southern California now. But just curious, the length of this pilot program for the trucks, and what can the community and our listeners do to support your efforts?
Absolutely. Well, fortunately, once they build the hydrogen fueling station, that should be staying for the long run, and as well as the first batch of trucks that we're getting, we'll be able to keep those. And so, what we'll be fighting for going forward is to expand it, to add more trucks to the program. We're also working on some changes in law in terms of truck weight rules to make sure that zero emission trucks are not disadvantaged relative to diesel trucks in terms of the amount of weight they can haul, which will help more companies adopt the zero emission trucks. And we will be going back to the state and regional funders for additional rounds of funding so that we can expand those trucks. There's another specific thing we are pushing the state to do, which folks can join us in urging their state representatives to support, which is the state of California has a program called Cash for Clunkers for cars, where if you have an old car that is a heavily polluting old car, the state funds programs where they will buy that car from you and then send it off to recycling so that the older heavily polluting car isn't driven at all anymore. And so we have asked the state to create a similar program for the older heavily polluting diesel trucks, so that someone who has one of them would be given a financial incentive to turn it in, to get it then off the road. And that is something that I've talked to some of the leaders at the state about. They're open to it, but they haven't actually launched such a program yet. The current state funding for Cash for Clunkers is only for cars and not for trucks. And I think that ties back again to environmental racism, because what's interesting, the cars are distributed everywhere. Cars are in white neighborhoods too. And so the funding for the program for the old cars gets funding from the state, right? The cars are in everybody's neighborhood. The trucks are very disproportionately concentrated, right? The trucks aren't driving around everywhere. The trucks are basically only in the Black neighborhoods and also the Latino neighborhood, like Fruitvale, areas like that. But the trucks are not on the 580, right? The trucks are not on the 13, right? So cars also impact white people, and there's a state-funded program to clean up the cars. The trucks are not in the white neighborhoods, and the state Cash for Clunkers program isn't paying to clean up the old trucks. So I brought a resolution to the Oakland City Council to ask the state to do Cash for Clunkers for trucks. And so one of the things that you and listeners can do, especially if they're in California, is talk to their state assembly member or their state senator and say, we want Cash for Clunkers for trucks too, not just for cars. The state itself could just buy out the worst of the old trucks, and then they're not polluting in our communities.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor, I had to raise my hand because for our audience who are not from Oakland and Alameda County, 880 runs directly through Black and brown neighborhoods for decades, almost over a half century, with these big trucks prior to them having the emissions, having to meet emissions qualifications. They go through the Black neighborhood. The 580 and Highway 13, those go into the white neighborhoods. So if those of you who were listening last week, we were talking about redistricting, and that goes directly into redistricting, because 580 has never allowed big rig trucks to go on them unless it's a CHP accident on 880 in Oakland and they have to do it. and they make it quick. And Highway 13, you better have a letter from the President of the United States before you put a big rig on Highway 13 and pollute those rich white people in the hills. Anyway, I had to put that out there. Thank you. Thank you, Vice.
Well, thank you. And, as you've pointed out that this is a national audience, I think it's important to mention that this is not something that is unique to Oakland. If you talk about Cancer Alley in Louisiana, that the heavy centering of the big chemical emissions from plants there is also disproportionately in the Black neighborhoods. So this is not unique to Oakland, but if you look at Northern California, the air pollution is concentrated in Oakland and in the Black and brown neighborhoods of Oakland.
Vice Mayor Kaplan and audience, whether it be here in Oakland or all across the United States. What intrigued me about this vice mayor and assembly person at large, and one of the main reasons that I put my name to endorse her when she ran again, is just what you're hearing here today on this podcast. She's concerned about all people. And until we understand that, they will not have anything to do with improving what's going on in the Black community of not only the city, this county, the state, but this country. Vice Mayor Rebecca Kaplan, I want to thank you for your candidness in regards to pointing out issues that some people want to go like this. Oh, I can't see it, so it's not happening. You Black people have problems, but since we don't see it, it's not our problem. You see it, you say it, and you do something about it. Thank you. Is it my turn, Dr. Ashley, or is it on you?
Yeah, we're actually, Vice Mayor Kaplan, we want to give you the final word to share with our listeners any messages or anything, just to open that line of communication. And I do also want to echo Doug's expression of appreciation for your efforts in the community.
Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate you having me. And, as we come to the time of year when people who don't normally talk about Dr. King all of a sudden talk about Dr. King, I thought I would perhaps close with a reminder that the big March on Washington that is commonly now referred to as the March on Washington for Civil Rights was actually called the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. For jobs and freedom. And so when we talk about continuing to fight to remedy injustice, it has to not just be theoretical, it has to also be in terms of jobs and freedom.
Since we have a little bit of time, and everybody on this show who watches it, whether it be in the United States or across the world, there's two questions I want to end up with. First off, there's been talk about two young men who had problems working in your office. And I was wondering, you can't go into personnel, and I understand that, but can you enlighten our audience on how you deal with situations, whether it be Black, white, male, female, or other, they, them? Can you enlighten our audience how you deal with situations? And I ask you that because I've worked for some of the biggest companies in this world, UPS, Cisco, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes I have to explain, because you also used to be the chair of labor and economic development for the Oakland branch of the NAACP, which now I'm a lifetime member of the national organization. But I tell our young Black men and women that sometimes it's not a good match. But we run, and I ran a business, and I fired Black, white, and other. So can you expand a little bit about that? So whatever misconception is floating out there, you can articulate on the Black Business Roundtable that is not a black or white issue. And let me be clear, if you didn't straighten it out before the show, I think our audience, based on what you've said tonight, have understand your thinking. Thank you.
Thank you so much. No, it is so important that we work respectfully and thoughtfully with everyone, and that includes anyone who are our employees, which of course you've had and I've had. And so when we talk about making sure that we're engaged in racial equity and making sure that we're engaged in personal respect and making sure that we refrain and that I personally refrain from doing any negativity or spreading any negativity about anyone. Those are all values that I hold dear and that I bring to my work as well as to my advocacy in the community, and I will continue to.
And last question. You were the one who fought, or you were one of, and I know Oakland African American, I got to give them their comp. Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce has fought with the city to bring these numbers on the disparity up forward. On my Facebook page, on my LinkedIn page, if you guys looked at it, I have recently let off a barrage of insults. First off, for the mayor of Oakland, Libby, for going to Washington, and Vice Mayor Kaplan, this isn't to you. To the mayor of Oakland, who went to Washington, D.C. to campaign to get a billionaire hundreds of millions of dollars to help his family, one family, build a Disneyland park at the Port of Oakland. And that's me talking. So I'm going to put that out there. When we have a disparity study that shows that close to $500 million is spent each year on contract services, and 95 to 99% of that money go to white men-owned businesses. Now, my question to you is, and it's not really a question because, audience, let me be clear. I've talked to all city council except 3 of them. And Rebecca Kaplan is the only one who was willing to think outside of the box and work with a local Oakland-born company to work with another larger company to create a program, and I'm not going to get into the detail. But Vice Mayor Rebecca Kaplan, council member, you were the only council member who came up with a solid plan to bring in more inclusion and less exclusion, because the disparity study showed that we have managers in this city who purposely give those contracts, $1 million contracts, tens of $1 million contracts, to companies who don't have a base here in Oakland, who have continuously showed racial discrimination to black and brown owned businesses. And that's why we have 70% of African Americans sitting under the bridge now. But Vice Mayor and my national and international audience, this council member, this Vice Mayor of Oakland, was the only one who said, hey, I got a plan and want to help make sure that you and we and us address that issue. I have not found that. Now, I challenged the mayor of Oakland. I challenged all the city council members, except a few, and you know who you are, to come on this show and call me a lie. The disparity studies show almost $500 million is spent on services, but less than 0.32%, and that's not even crumbs. You can just lick the pan because there's nothing left. So I apologize for that passion, but I had to give you your props. And I'm telling you, City of Oakland, this is not over. The Black Business Roundtable is going to uncover why you continuously for decades refused to share those contracts with Black men and women-owned business in this city. And if you don't choose to change, we're going to choose to vote you out. Council.
That's right.
Council member, please, Vice Mayor, please take it away.
Thank you so much. No, you are absolutely right. And I'm going to add one other specific example of what's going on, because I think this is something that we could all continue to push for together. One of the things that we learned in our follow-up meetings about the disparity study is that some of the problem happens when a prime contractor, in order to get a city bid, says that they will be using certain subcontractors, primarily Black subcontractors or other people of color subcontractors. And then that prime gets the contract and then they don't use those subs that they promised to use. And so part of what is needed to remedy injustice is to be willing to dig into the detail of like, wait, where exactly is it falling apart? And so we've diagnosed that that is one of the specific problems. We've started reaching out to the administration about it and about remedying it. But I see that as something that's going to take more public pressure so that the city staff who oversee the contracts should have to enforce that if a prime promises to use subs and then doesn't, that needs to be stopped and that money needs to be taken and given to where it needs to go, because that is also part of where Black businesses are losing business that they are supposed to be getting, is when the city doesn't enforce on primes who drop their subs. So that is another follow-up piece that came out of that disparity study work, and that we should work together to continue to push on.
Once again, audience, Vice Mayor for the City of Diversity, Oakland, California, Council Member at Large, we have truly enjoyed your candidness and your ability to articulate without seeing black or white, but seeing human. Because, audience, this is not a civil situation now. We're dealing with human rights. And until we have politicians in there who are willing to see the problem instead of not see the problem, we're going to continuously have a big black problem, not only here in Oakland, in the county, in the state, but all across this nation. Vice Mayor, if you would like to give some closing remarks, because we are way ahead of schedule, thanks to you and your PowerPoint presentation and your timeliness. I don't know about you, Dr. Ashley. I am truly smitten by Vice Mayor Kaplan's ability to see that there is a problem here in Oakland, a big black problem here in Oakland, and is willing and bold enough to take it on. That's big. Audience, this is what our politicians need to emulate themselves at. Vice Mayor, can you give us some closing remarks?
Thank you so much. I so appreciate getting to spend some time with you. This is such a pleasure, and congratulations on your fabulous show. And I'm honored to get to spend some time with the two of you and your whole audience. Greetings and appreciation to everyone from throughout the whole country who is watching us here. And let's see, since we are in Oakland, I'll close with a scripture. Yes, did you know Oakland has the most churches per capita of any city west of the Mississippi? So Psalm 118, verse 22, the 118th Psalm, verse 22, the rock the builders rejected shall become thy topmost cornerstone. The rock the builders rejected, right? So that which has been looked down upon and discriminated against and treated badly shall become thy topmost cornerstone, shall rise up and not only be treated as equal, but shall come to the highest place. And that was written by King David, who himself was a scrawny kid who was picked on and made fun of and was not a soldier. And the other kids who, were bigger and stronger and were soldiers made fun of him. And he would go, shepherd the sheep and sit off to the side and write poetry and write prayers to God. And they looked down on him. And and he was the young son of a poor man. And at the time, that would mean, you couldn't possibly become king, because the way you became king was to be the eldest son of the previous king, or at least you had to be wealthy and powerful. And David was the young, scrawny son of a poor man, and so he was treated like he couldn't ever amount to anything.
Right.
And of course, he overcame that, and came to be a great leader. And so let us bring that reminder and that vision into the work that we do in Oakland and in community, and in making sure that people who have been left behind are fully respected and included and uplifted.
And on that beautiful note,
Mhm.
we welcome you back on this show. And I will be talking to some of the business, many of the business entities, including African American Sports and Entertainment Group, CRC, Construction Resource Center, with our friends to the show, Lynn Turner and Latanya Hawkins. And I won't mention the other wonderful thing that you're working on, but we want to welcome you back onto the show at your convenience. And we thank you for enlightening our audience that there are some politicians who are trying to make a difference.
Mhm.
God bless you. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Ashley, can you give us a quick sponsor break? And I believe we're right on time.
Oh, that sounds good. Just wow, just really reflecting on those comments, and just and still that PowerPoint is something that just really spoke volumes.
Dr.
Uh,
Before you start, can you give the psychological effect of people who look like you and me and on this stage here and across this nation, how it must affect us? Because I don't even have to see anything like that to know when I get outside of the city of Oakland, the air quality is different and has been different from my 51 years of living in this city, and how they're trying to do things differently now because white people are moving in West Oakland. But how Rebecca, what she's doing, how that affects the child mentally and socially. Thank you.
Absolutely. Actually, in Southern California, this discussion is also happening in the neighborhoods of Compton and Paramount. But this idea first, when we experience something and it's discounted, our reality is not validated. That can make us not trust ourselves, not be able to advocate. And so it really takes people, again, taking the risk, like Vice Mayor Kaplan, to expose what's going on, to have evidence. But what we're missing in that slideshow that she's highlighting are all the people, Black and Brown people, over the last 30 years who have developed health conditions, and then have a hard time accessing the resources for treatment, let alone have to actually, then be validated or understand to get the quality of treatment that they deserve. So there's so much red tape there. I think more importantly, it can lead to, again, I'm not a physician, but we're looking at respiratory problems, as you mentioned, asthma, risk for cancer, potential learning problems for children. So there are a lot of negative consequences related to pollution.
Thank you for that enlightening and informative breakout of how Black men and women and boys and girls are mentally being challenged with this environmental nightmare of bad exhaust and fume, and overlooking the safety of our young people in our city. And right on time, let's welcome Janani Ramachandran, our social justice warrior, friend of the show, and our very own legal eagle. How are you, Janani?
I am doing great. How are both of you?
We are well. Nope. Dr. Ashley, how are you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. Happy to see you again. Of course, doing well.
Well, let me just tell you, you just missed our, or you may have chimed in on it, but we had our Vice Mayor, Rebecca Kaplan, on, and she did a marvelous, marvelous show with us today. We want to start off with you. Welcome back, first, Jonathan. You are always welcome and always attending community meetings, volunteering, and doing outreach in the community. What are your plans for Martin Luther King Jr. Day this coming Monday?
There are so many amazing community events happening on Monday. I need to make decisions on where to split my time at. But, we are back in the middle of the pandemic. So everything going on that I know is outdoors. There are some car caravans. There's several things happening. I will hopefully be attending City Church, which is here in the Laurel Diamond area. They have an event pretty much every year called, this year's is called Fighting for Hope in the Hour of Homicide, which is led by a friend of mine, Reverend Harry Williams, commonly known as OG Rev, who calls himself the street preacher, former hip hop recording artist turned minister turned street minister. So I know that one's going to be good. There's also at the Oakland Museum the Art of Reparations showcase going on, and that's going to be exciting. I definitely hope to attend that in the afternoon. There are tons of local volunteer in your neighborhood type of community events too. And there's one in my local park at Saucil Creek. There's a restoration cleanup event, and I believe really strongly in advocacy for local parks because I think parks and green spaces are tools for public safety. You have more green spaces, you have more space for kids, families, etc., opportunities to do things, improves mental health, quality of life, etc., etc. So I'm excited to participate in some of those, and we'll see where the rest of the day takes me. But most importantly, I set aside a little space for reflection on MLK Jr.'s legacy and hope for the year forward.
Dr. Ashley?
Yes. So, what are your views, given that, like, Vice Mayor Kaplan talked about her work with Ray Bobbitt and AASEG, her position and work with the CRC? How do you view the work that she's doing for Oakland?
Rebecca's been a fantastic leader for many years for our city. And there are a lot of initiatives that I think are remarkable. And I know you've talked about ASEG and bringing in a WNBA team and others on the show already. But one thing that I think is pretty exceptional that she did that more council members and electeds should be doing is her insight into our budget. So recently she discovered $10 million from a settlement with the Warriors. I'm actually not sure if you talked about that or not, but that's $10 million for homelessness services. That's $10 million for affordable housing. That's $10 million for city services, which is a lot of money given the size of our budget. And because of not reading between the lines on Excel spreadsheets, that money had gotten lost essentially. And she's done this with other initiatives before. She's found pockets of money, or she's questioned city staff and other city leaders about money that belongs to the people. And that's something that I really admire in her. She also cares deeply about cannabis equity. As far, we know which communities here in Oakland are historically prosecuted for cannabis-related crimes. And we know in general, right now in the state of California, who are the people that make money off of cannabis. And those are not the same communities. They are very racially divided, and we know that. And she has been proactive in addressing some of those disparities, and I admire that too. She cares deeply about the environment, and I know that one of her many initiatives includes introducing more emission-free trucks and non-diesel vehicles, hydrogen trucks. And I'm personally very excited about that because of the impacts that of environmental injustice has had here for our communities in Oakland. So lots of things. I'm a fan, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny, you missed out last week while we were on location at Soul Slice. And the next time we are there, you must come down. But the peach cobbler is incredible. Oh my God. Let me ask you this. Have you had a chance to get over there yet?
I have not. I have been cooped up in my house. I'm a little afraid of the variant right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I am going to get some takeout in the next week from Soul Slice. I'm very excited to try it out, to support Black-owned businesses. Just this week we've had another major restaurant closing. Yeah, we've had a few recently, but I think with each and every one, we need to make sure that space is filled by another locally owned, small, Black-owned business.
I'm glad you brought that up. In light of the disparity study, and I don't know if you've been watching my Facebook, LinkedIn, and every other page, but I've been lighting Oakland up because this disparity study, first off, the Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce had to fight to get it released, and it still hasn't been eradicated by City Council. So we're going to be pushing for that to happen. But the restaurant was called the Brown Sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Brown Sugar Kitchen. Really groundbreaking restaurant owner, innovative recipes. I mean, this is a restaurant that made national news for its approach, and the fact that it got shut down. I think the same week as Luca's, which wasn't Black owned, but very much frequented by communities of color for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Girl, that's why I said, audience, Johnny Ramachandran knows all about Oakland, restaurants, etc. Some of these politicians, they can't tell you anything that's below 580 and definitely not below Highway 13. So, Johnny, this show wants to let you know that we support you and we stand behind you, whatever you do. The Black Business Roundtable support legal eagle, social justice warriors such as yourself. And I'm glad India allowed you to come back here to Oakland, California, where we need you, sister.
Thank you.
Desperately need you. Thank you. Dr. Ashley, would you like to say a few things before we have a special writing that I wrote up that Dr. Ashley's going to read for me because I might get too mad and mess up because I'm very angry. Audience, not only here in Oakland, not only here in Alameda County, not only here in California, but nationally. What Dr. Ashley's going to read that I wrote is going to knock your socks off. Go ahead, Dr. Ashley.
Sure. I just want to, Janani, just say stay well. And it's, again, always happy to have you here. And you bringing up Lucas just brought back so many memories as that was one of the hot spots. But I'm really hoping you're such a champion for our unhoused residents. And I'm really hoping that that $10 million that was discovered can make its way through some fruitful efforts and establishment of housing. And again, we want to invite all of our listeners to continue to follow our friend of the show, Janani, on all social media platforms and see what she is doing in our community. And are you ready, Doug, for me to read?
Girl, John and Nee, you might want to listen to this, but I'm please light it up, Dr. Ashley.
Absolutely. So, to whom it may concern, the city of Oakland spent over $500 million, and African Americans prime contractors were awarded less than 1% of those contract dollars the city awarded during the year's study. Even after the 2017 Disparity report was completed and released to the public, the City Council has not adopted it. Thus, they have not implemented its recommendations. Oaklanders need answers as to why implementation is not taking place as of today's broadcast of the Black Business Roundtable on January 13th, 2022. Managers continue to openly discriminate against African American businesses as of today. Within the last 12 months, there are at least 2 African American contractors that were listed in a Prime's multi-million-dollar bid. However, neither contractor received a subcontract from the prime contractor equal to the amount listed in the Prime's bid. One contractor was offered a contract for 50% of the amount in its $4 million contract, and the other was not offered a contract at all. The current staff existing of the administration and the city council have not enforced their existing small business policies. On January 17, 2022, MLK Day, the city council is being asked to approve 3 contracts, each worth $14 million, to 3 white contractors headquartered outside of Oakland. The advertised contracts were so large that only 4 companies bid. However, the work is to fill potholes, stripe streets, and cut curbs for the handicapped. The contracts are for work deemed as technical. The administration is asking the city council on its January 17th meeting for authorization to award the 3 contracts without meeting the small local business goal. The contracts for filling potholes should be smaller, and no less than 7 contracts should be awarded. 1 awarded per city council district. Only when the contracts are reduced in size will African Americans be able to bid. Equally important is the fact that only when the contracts are awarded by council district will there be any assurance that African American neighborhoods will not be the last to have their potholes filled, or for that matter, even have their potholes filled at all. As is often the case, the funds on large citywide public works projects are expended before our neighborhoods receive service. While Black lives may matter in some communities, there is a lack of concern in Oakland, furthering the disparity. Sincerely, Doug Blacksher.
Let me be clear, audience. Oakland, if you release those contracts to these these white contractors, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. Second, one of the contractors, if not 2 or 3 of them, have done work around Lake Merritt. And the work is so shoddy that the potholes that they fill are now ponds with fish in them. So, Oakland, get your act together. We have Black businesses out here that are hurting, that can do the work, that you choose to use racist, and I'll say it, you choose to use racist contracting schemes not to include Black people, Black businesses in this economy in Oakland, California. And I once again cite the Disparity study. that demonstrated almost $500 million go to white men-owned companies. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, Oakland. Shame of yourself. And you got the mayor in Washington, D.C. trying to get some money for a multi-billionaire to build his Disneyland park with, and you're not looking out for the black businesses here in Oakland. Shame, shame, shame. And if you want to come on the show and defend yourself, I challenge you. Please do. Now, to that end, John, I apologize. I get emotional. And this goes to, once again, black people are on the bottom of everything, not in the city, in this county, in the state, and in this country, but in the world. And this is the kind of trick or trickery that happens to black people, which caused and continues this pattern. Janani Ramachandran, Esquire, our social justice warrior and our legal eagle. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for your statement and the passion that you bring to words, that both of you bring to words, Black-owned businesses in Oakland and beyond, and the issue of contracting, which would love to continue the conversation about. I really deeply appreciate you highlighting those statistics that we don't talk about as much as we should be. On that note, I will leave you. Have a great rest of your evening.
We'll see you next week. Thank you to our weekly special guest, Dr. Ashley Coleman, Doctor of Psychology. We are glad to have back every week Janani Ramachandran, our grassroots fighter of human rights in Oakland, California. See more of Janani at janani4ca.com or Instagram at janani4ca. Thank you, Rebecca Kaplan, Oakland Vice Mayor and Council Member at Large, serving on Alameda County Transportation Commission and Coliseum Board. Instagram Kaplan for Oakland or email at large at oaklandcalifornia.gov. Thank you all for your appearance on the show today, and we hope that you will come back and continue to educate our growing audience in the future. A special shout out to Donnie Glover of Black USA News and current sponsor Magnolia Engineering and Construction to join our Black Business Roundtable advertisement as Soul Slice will starting next week. I can't wait to see those peach cobblers and this girl. We're gonna be having a show at his place 2 or 3 times. But to join our Black Business Roundtable advertisement family or to be a possible guest on the show, reach us via our email, bbrt2021@hotmail.com. That's bbrt2021@hotmail.com. Include your company name, address, website, company phone number, and social media page info to our email address. And once again, bbrt2021@hotmail.com. We also have a network of shows hosted by Donnie Glover, such as Chap and Friends on Monday, Hardy Marty, Let's Talk on Tuesday, Sister Bear with Nicole and Tomorrow on Wednesday, Black USA Crypto News with my brother, Kamal Hubbard. Now, and he's on Friday. Now, let me just briefly say something about Kamal Hubbard. If you have any question on cryptocurrency, You got to check this brother out. Kamal Hubbard. And 60 Minutes in Black USA with Michael Haney. So be sure to check out these Black voices and guiding light of our community. Oh, and the Saturday show, Saturday morning, I guess it's so early, I don't get up that early, at 10 o'clock on East Coast time and 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Audience, thank you for tuning in. And remember, together, we can listen, we can learn, and share, because I know you care. This is Doug Blacksher of the Black Business Roundtable. God bless and good night.
Happy birthday, Doug.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ash.